Hi guys, welcome back to Induction Noise. This is episode, what are we on now? Like 12?
Like 6?
6? 4?
It's not 5, is it not? Are we not 5?
No, I believe we're on 6.
Is it?
No. We've recorded like way more episodes. But I think the ones that we've actually released, I think it's only like episode 4 or 5 now, aren't it?
Yes. Anyway.
Doesn't matter which episode it is. Welcome back to Induction Noise. This is, of course, the official Carbs and Coffee podcast, the one and only. And today we are one short of our usual number due to unforeseen circumstances. Andre is not with us today. So welcome, Niku.
How's it, guys? How you going?
Hi, Neil. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic.
Yourself? How are you doing, Q?
I am Mr. Q. I am doing well. I'm feeling very ill-prepared today. I don't know what the hell's going on with this. It's just a very lazy Sunday.
Plus, we spent 2.5 hours talking about everything we should have discussed in the studio.
Yeah, we got together this morning for 2.5 hours just talking crap, and then we got into the studio and suddenly no one has anything to say.
And basically, Q also got roasted most of the time by his wife.
We should have had it recorded.
We should have had a recording of her telling us how you reversed into a BMW.
I did no such thing.
How
that
she
BMW
moved the rock.
came out of nowhere, and
you basically had a grill inside your Cortina at Killarney as well.
We did do that. Yeah, it was a Granada, not a Cortina.
Granada.
We're classier than that. Thank you.
But anyway, wait. For Andre's sake, this is the only time I'm going to come up for Andre in this episode. For Andre's sake. This guy, because I know Andre's going to listen to this guy added a sub in an S2000. He took a lightweight vehicle and decided, you know what would be fucking cool? Let me put a sub at in the footwell of the vehicle and throw off the balance of this brilliantly lightweight S2000 completely and take it on track like that.
Yeah, I feel quite victimized how they always go on about all the cars that I like and the weight of it, and then you put a sub in the front of your S2000, which is never admitted until his wife casually threw it into the discussion.
I would like to point out at this stage that I did put the sub in the footwell of my S2000, but with very good reason. You see, the thing is, any guy who's ever driven a Subaru will tell you that there is such a thing as left to right weight distribution in a car. And since I'm a fat bastard, I have to put something on the left-hand side of the car to balance that out. So I had to put the sub there in order to make the car handle properly. I mean, it's just logical. It's science. You can't argue with that.
Good save, bro.
Okay. Well
I've been working on that for a week or so.
You knew this was going to come up.
So anyway, where were we? It's podcast. That's what we're doing. Today's discussion is going to be about the ones that got away. And I think as petrol heads, we all have that story of the one that we wanted to buy and we probably shouldn't have bought. And for whatever reason, we didn't. And it just got away from us. We live with this deep sense of regret that we will carry with us to the grave unless we rectify that situation. And sometimes, as is in my case, which we'll hear later, I can't rectify that situation because the car that got away from me is no longer a possibility for me. But we'll get to that. But before we go there, there's something that sort of ties into that, which I think kind of also creates the ones that got away, and that's this thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's car kind of thing. You know, I can think of a couple of examples of cars owned by either friends or family members that I absolutely lusted after. And I'm sure you guys have got stories of those cars.
I have a few.
So, Neil, why don't you kick us off? What is it that you wanted to steal from who?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was nothing really. I think there's maybe like a whole range of different vehicles, and my grandfather he was an Alfisti, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I never told you guys about it because all his
was that allowed in Caledon?
He was that was out in Kimberley, and he had a variety of different Alphas, and representing the Alfisti here today, of course, is Nico. Yeah. But so I'm not going to act like I can remember any of the cars that he owned. But he did have also after that have a variety of BMWs. And if I'm allowed to segue into the car that I actually would have liked to buy from him, it's nothing too special. But a couple of years ago, he let go. I was looking for a daily driver at the time, and he had a pristine E90 320D auto sunroof that he wanted to sell.
I actually own two of those.
Great cars.
Yeah.
They are.
And you'll probably know the punchline's coming, so wait for it. When he was looking to sell it, it had this was about 5 years ago. He was going on a little bit in age, and they decided to get something a little bit higher off the ground. The car had under 90,000 Ks on the clock.
Wow.
My grandfather never missed the service. He washed the car himself. And he sold that car in the end for 80,000 Rand.
Wow.
And to this day, I really regret not just buying it.
Yeah.
As I
So
said,
that was the one you coveted and the one that got away.
it was. I think it's because if you look at what those cars are worth and what they typically go for with that sort of mileage, and you're not going to find a 320D
You're not
with
gonna
a
find
sunroof with that sort of mileage on it. The older
And not
ones,
one you struggle to find them now that have actually just been looked after.
exactly. Yeah. And it was
So-
mainly because friends and family is typically the ones, and he was the one that really took care of anything. So I could have probably chosen any of the previous BMWs that he had. He had an old 520 BM as well, and which I remember growing up in, and that car had a specific smell in it. So it would have purely been for nostalgia, for nostalgia reasons. I would have liked to buy it, but that's unfortunately long before I even had a driver's license.
The one thing always about someone that had someone with alphas in the family, or someone that used to own an alpha that wasn't maybe didn't maybe know the models back then or so, it's always fascinating to me, because for some reason it's always the people next to the side of the road. They'll see the alpha, or like some old fart walking into a room that think they know something now, and they're like, I used to have an alpha, and they weren't to go like Neil, like I didn't know the models or whatever. They was like, I used to own an alpha. What alpha was it again? Oh, it was an Alfa Romeo. I'm like, all right, dude, that's a brand.
Yeah.
Need a bit more detail than that.
Yeah, that annoys the hell out of me. That annoys the hell out of me.
Alfa
Like,
Romeo.
oh, I had an Alfa Romeo. Okay, cool story, bro. But which one did you have? But yeah, that E90. My dad used to have, I think he had two of them as well. It was awesome cars. It was, and I think.
Oh wow! I tell a lie. I had 3 of them. So yeah, I got my dark blue one. I got brand new when they basically just came out. And the only reason I got rid of that one was because at some stage or another, a petrol station that will remain nameless was in the process of cleaning their tanks and moving stuff from auxiliary tanks into their main tanks. Somehow something got mixed up, and they filled that car with a mixture of diesel and petrol.
Ooh, yeah.
And then the entire fuel system got replaced under BMW's motor plan, which I was eternally grateful for. And eventually I got the car back, but I genuinely can't put my finger on it, but it was never the same again. You know, every once in a while you'd be driving along and it'll be great, and then you just get this little cough or a hiccup, or
it's just never been the same.
it was just never the same after that.
Yeah.
And then I actually got a little bit lucky because my mom had a 320 diesel at the time, which was virtually identical to mine, but it was grey. And my dad wanted to trade that in on something. I can't remember what it was. So I said, well, if you're going to be trading in a E90 320 diesel, trade mine in and I'll take hers. That way I get a car with slightly less mileage on it that runs properly and is not broken. And we get rid of the one that just isn't how it should be. So we did that. And that's how I got my second 320 diesel. And then after I sold that, I didn't have a 320 diesel for quite a few years. And then eventually my brother wanted to trade in his E90 320 diesel, but his was a manual with the M Sport pack on it. And he wanted to trade that in on a Ford Ranger, I think it was. And I basically said, well, whatever they offer you for the car, I'll buy it. And so I did. And that was the third one that I had. And I didn't have that car very long, but it was brilliant. I mean, all three of them, they genuinely are just brilliant cars, those.
That's you know what I've realized now, for people that bash on the new BMWs quite a lot, we've actually had a lot of BMW experiences, and we've lusted after BMWs a lot.
BMWs used to be brilliant cars.
They used to be.
I just don't know why they went wrong. Because
Well, we do have I don't know, we don't talk about it, but we do have at home. My wife drives a BMW, so
the X1, yeah.
the X1. So, and I mean, I really think it's every time I drive it, it's a really well made car. I'm now that it's out of motor plan. Let's see what happens. I'm a little bit skeptical about it, but
is it a diesel?
No. It's not.
Because their diesels are actually bulletproof. Those things will keep going forever and ever and ever.
The X5 M50D, and that's actually a car that I lust after. I lust after quite a lot of cars that my dad have. I have to say, I love his vehicles. His new Raptor, I had the weekend playing with that, driving it around, etc. And oh my, it just, like we said before I drove it, it just doesn't make sense. For a bakkie to do that. A full tank gets you around 400 kilometers, but is it so much damn fun for a modern vehicle, for a modern bakkie to be that fun? But anyways, here's X5 M50D. It's one of the best motors out there for me, because it's such an awesome vehicle. Like, it's got the torque, it's got the top end, and it's such a smooth motor. For a diesel to be that quick in such a big body and still get good mileage out of it, it's such a good motor. It's one of the best motors out there for me. If you're looking at more dailyable motors that's in vehicles, it's such a good motor. And then going back, he always had BMWs from when I was little. I believe he said he tried a Merc once, and he hated it. Went back to BMWs, and his estates, had a lot of BMW estates, 5 Series, 3 Series, and then his E90. I remember coming back from tennis, at a tennis tournament. It started raining, and traffic was insane in Joburg. And I just remember, I think traction was on. It wasn't like anything like trying to be a yobbo or so, but I just remember him pulling out of the tennis courts, taking a bit of a gap, chucking it sideways, and I thought, damn, my dad's cool and this car's so cool. You know,
it's crazy how many memories are like there. Huh? Like
it's crazy. And another car I lust after is my uncle. He used to have awesome cars.
You lust after your uncle.
His vehicles.
Oh, right, okay.
His vehicles,
that makes
mate.
more sense. We're not that kind of podcast here.
The most uncomfortable semi-nuke ever nursed, apart from watching Brokeback Mountain, basically.
So I
Edit that out.
I don't remember this that vividly, but I vividly remember a gold or yellow M3 in our garage. And I think recently I still asked my dad about it, and I was like, whose car was that? Who? And I remember he said my uncle used to have like crazy cars. He had a Targa, which I also have like a imagination in my figment of my brain of remembering a Targa. But I vividly remember a gold or yellow E36 M3.
That's a Dakar yellow then, most likely.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I used to think it was the E46, but then I spoke to my dad, and he said it was, he had like 3 E36 M3s, my uncle. And I remember, I remember that car so well in my mind, and I can't tell you why, because I promise you I've probably never been in it. And it's a car that I really love. A Dakar yellow M3.
Great.
There was actually one parked outside my office, not yesterday, the day before yesterday, and I just thought to myself, this is actually in really good condition. It was the 4-door.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, one of these things today is probably worth a good chunk of change, because finding a good one of these is becoming very difficult.
It's becoming very hard, and I mean it's because they all went through that stage of cars being cheap as well, even the M3s. And one of the cars that got away, and look, I didn't really have the money for it at that stage or so. I was probably like 19 or 20 or something. And there was a guy selling a E36 M3 white two-door for under 40 grand. And I thought, what colossal F up must this car be? And I thought, let me just go look, because it was Bloemfontein small. It was around the corner of me. And I went there, and the interior was taken apart. You know, you could see the guy either tried to start working on it, or he used it for something and then stopped. Just didn't have interest anymore. And I went and I drove the car, and the motor was sweet. Gearbox was sweet, but it would have needed a clutch, and then the interior put back together. But I mean, that's
For
not
less than
that,
40 grand.
For less than 40
Yeah.
grand for an M3, and also.
Yeah,
the,
you wouldn't.
The Oak
you
literally
wouldn't want to
told
buy
me.
a 40 grand M3 today.
No, but the Oak literally told me they did spin in the car. They went to to Kimberley, drove through to Kimberley, spanned the living out of the car, and
Span? You mean spun?
span.
They span it across this gap here. Like basically.
and then brought it back. But even with that, right, the mechanical side of the car felt quite decent, except for the clutch.
But you know, those old BMWs were built like
They
brick
could take
houses.
abuse.
They could take it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's limits to everything, but they were pretty bulletproof because they were just built like tanks.
Yeah.
The new ones, I fear, are a lot more fragile when it comes to that kind of treatment, but also because they're being stretched so much further to get so much more performance out of them.
Yeah.
Because a modern M3 has genuinely got supercar performance.
Yeah.
It's not super saloon anymore. That is
It's
proper
supercar
supercar
speed, yeah.
performance.
What
but yeah.
is interesting is I've got a mate in Bloem that has a E92 M3, and his wife drives a M235i. And funny enough, over the past year, he told me the M235 is more expensive to maintain than his E92 M3,
Oh wow.
It wouldn't surprise me.
which is, I was shocked. I was honestly, because everyone always says, oh, the E92 with the rod bearings and whatever. Now he
Yeah, but
did
you
that.
do the rod bearings once.
Yeah, he did
You
that
don't-
preventive
You don't do it every
maintenance, and
year.
from there,
It's fine.
the M3 has been cheaper than an M235, which I thought would be a cheap-ish sports car to maintain, but it's apparently not. Apparently it likes blowing head gaskets more than Subaru.
Wow.
So the car that I've got as the one that I coveted, the one that I really wanted, it's more like it's based on a specific car, but it's kind of like a genre of car as well. And it comes from the fact that I've always had this thing about having the best example of whatever I've got. So whenever I bought a car, I looked around, I shopped around, I always wanted to have the best example of whatever it is that I can find. So when I bought my Beamers, they were always the cleanest, lowest mileage one I could find. My XJR, I literally bought because I'd never seen one that clean before. S2000s, same story. I looked for ages before I bought one, and the ones that I bought were always the best, the cleanest ones that I could find. But with that comes this nagging responsibility in the back of your head to take care of this thing. And you end up not doing certain things because you don't want to mess up the car. In fact, I sold my Birkin, my Lotus 7 replica, because I was starting to do track days with it, and I didn't want to mess it up on the track. So I sold it so that I could build something that was a bit more track focused than the Lotus was.
And that is still being built.
We don't talk about that. So
Fucking canoe.
the car that I'm talking about that I lusted after it's the most stupid thing that you can imagine, and it's not something that anyone with half a brain would probably lust after, but I genuinely thought this was like the coolest thing ever. And it's a family friend of ours, a guy called Vian, young guy, but he's very into cars. He's very mechanical. He likes to work on his own cars. Him and his dad have always worked on cars when he was a kid as well. And they've built loads of cars together. And the one that I specifically kind of half fell in love with is this orange like Gungston orange 19 footsack Datsun 120Y.
Okay. Road car, like just
Road
stock
car.
road car?
Stock-ish. Because it started life as a stock road car. It was then involved in an accident, and Vian fixed it. He painted it the orange color, made it look like it's supposed to, which is, as good as a Datsun can look. But then my Lotus, at one stage, just after I bought it, the engine was badly modified, blah, 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 ended up running bearings on it, so it needed to be rebuilt. At that stage, it was cheaper for me to just buy a new a new import motor than to rebuild the old one. So I replaced the engine. Vian helped me do it, and as a reward for helping me put in the new engine, I gave him the old one.
Was it a Kent motor?
No, it was a 4AGE 20-valve Toyota motor.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
So he then went and rebuilt that motor, had the crank cut, had the heads done, had everything done that needed to be done on that motor, and then he installed it in that Datsun 120Y. So it was a surprisingly quick little thing.
It's
It
it's
made
basically a tin box. so-
completely ridiculous amount of noise. In order to fit it in there, he had to cut some of the firewall, and there was no sound deadening left in it. And those
Who needs safety, right?
those 20-valve motors with the ITBs on them scream like anything when you've got the induction noise coming off that thing. So it was a noisy, nasty little thing that you could throw around, and you don't have to care about it. You can take it on a dirt road and drift the hell out of it. You can thrash it around, do whatever the hell you want with it, because if you're praying it, I mean, what's it worth? Like,
No.
so
It's worth the motors. I don't think it's
Yeah,
worth
it's
it.
worth
exactly,
motor
and
that
even
you
if
can
you
take
do
out.
prang it, mechanically, it's so simple. It's going to cost you $50 to fix it, as long as you can do it yourself in your garage. So that was something that I really wanted, because I liked the idea of being able to thrash a car and just have fun with it, where it doesn't feel like it's costing you anything to do it. And I've never really had that, because, like I said, I've always had the nicest example of whatever I wanted, and that car, that sort of genre of a cheap but cheerful, playful thing that you could just mess around with, it really appealed to me, and I was kind of envious of that car.
Those little Datsuns still, to this day, I find myself sometimes like trawling through Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah,
There's
they
something
cool-looking
about them.
cars.
There's something about them. My uncle had one that he drove around in Kleinmond, and
And
he had to use like
crucially, they're not as heavy as new Nissans.
yeah, exactly. You know,
And you can put a rotary in them and completely mess up the JDM alignment, because I've seen a lot of them with rotaries.
I mean,
in
this
and
was a
that
Datsun
moves.
with a Toyota engine in it, so it was also kind of two opposing forces working together.
Rear
there.
wheel drive, not four wheel drive.
Yeah.
None of that nonsense.
But anyway, since we've now been
But-
talking nonsense,
But just to get on that point of buying a cheap car and actually enjoying it, and this is kind of a selfish thing on my side, I think. But I've recently also thought about, like, I would love something that's a bit cheap, a bit banged up or so, that is a bit higher off the ground as well. Basically, I want a cheap off-road thing, and it's also kind of a car that my dad
I
used
wouldn't
to own.
recommend the RAV though.
I
I really
was
would
just
Yeah,
going
not
to
I
say
don't
recommend that.
the
think- I
RAV
don't
is a
think,
pile of crap. You
Yeah,
don't
no,
want to
you don't
go
want
there.
that. Especially
You don't
like
want the RAV.
especially the
Didn't we know
1990s
someone
one.
who's got a RAV?
Yeah, it used to be on the podcast. I mean,
He
What?
used to be there, but
what's his name
He-
again?
he
We
was-
wouldn't,
he
we
was-
wouldn't allow someone who drives a RAV on the
he
show.
sat on a
Jeez.
donut, I remember, but then he said it was a cone. But anyways, let's not
we're regressing.
We
let's gloss
digress.
off. Yeah. It was, my dad used to have a Grand Cherokee, but with the 5.7 Hemi. And I've got this urge inside of me that I want a vehicle that I can go play on Atlantis with. I want to go to Atlantis and play around in the sand, whatever.
It's going to cost you like 20 grand in petrol to get a 5.7 Hemi from here to Atlantis, right?
I mean, some guys is drinking out 20 grand tonight watching the Springboks against France and But anyways, we're digressing again.
Sure.
What? So and with some of Leone's friends, etc., that's not always car people. You drive people around because you're the only one that doesn't drink, or you prefer driving because you get shit scared of
Someone else is
someone
driving.
else is driving. So I prefer driving. I prefer driving my own vehicles. But then sometimes when they get in, like, let's say the Volvo, I'm thinking like, don't put your legs up against the seat, or don't kick the door while you're getting in. So I was thinking,
Especially when you're driving drunk people.
That
I
has
hate
one.
driving drunk
Yeah.
people in my car.
Yes.
Like, I arranged my mate's bachelor's party at a nightclub in Somerset West a couple of years ago. Well, his first wife. He's on 3, 4. I don't know how many wives he's been through, but anyway.
Did you drive them every time?
I drove him back from his bachelor's party because he never actually... I arranged this really cool party with, like, the VIP lounge was booked out for us. We had a full casino set up in there. We had our own waiters and waitresses serving drinks in there, our own little private bar. It was going to be like this cool, boys vibe in the VIP Kings for the Kings for the night, but instead he got there, got absolutely hammered within the first 10-15 minutes, started throwing up, and we had to take him home. And I then had to put him in my E90 320 diesel and bring him home. And yeah, he was hanging out the window, so we got back here quite late at night, and I ended up having to hose down the side of my E90 because I was like, that shit's corrosive, bro.
That shit's gonna...
Like, you've probably got leather seats, so you can just rub that off.
No, yeah, I told him, you do not put your head inside that window. You hang out like a dog.
Yeah, I had a mate as well where we were driving the Alpha and we were on night out, and then at a point this became like a ritual. So after a night out, we went to Mackie D's. It was 24 hours. Got a McDonald's, and then drove. We had this road called Liggies, which was basically like, imagine going up Eau Rouge but in Bloemfontein.
Wow,
It
that
was
is something.
the best.
Let us just envision that for a moment.
Eau Rouge
but
in Bloemfontein. That would be like Eau Royes.
Royes, yeah.
Royes. But anyways, that's the best corner in Bloemfontein. It's
The only corner in Bloemfontein.
Yeah, it's quite a hill, and it literally went like Eau Rouge, and at the top you also couldn't see what was coming, and your car got light there. So always when we got at the top of Eau Rouge, you would have had one cheeseburger in, which you ate in my car. And at the top of Eau Rouge in Bloemfontein, Eau Royes.
This is the Bloemfontein in Mexico, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
He would always tell me, I would know to stop. There was a little street that turned off to the left, and I would know I need to stop there because he is gonna vomit. But then the one day,
this like podcast has gone way off on a tangent that I'm not really enjoying.
Listen, at least we're speaking about Eau Rouge Alphas and not Camrys.
We must actually be like now the anorak in me is coming out. So sorry that I'm interrupting you, Nico, because if we now really we're gonna have some diehard Formula One fans listening to this, and they're gonna point out that Eau Rouge is actually not what I call it Eau Rouge as well, but that's Radillon. It's the top of the hill, and Eau Rouge is the river flowing underneath at the bottom of it. So that's just so in case no one else is like banging
We wouldn't want the internet to be fact-checking us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So basically, then Bloemfontein is the Brandewynvallei, is where Eau Rouge starts, and then the Kerkbropdop is then the top corner where we stop. Let's call it that.
Yeah. Saved it.
But then the one mate of mine basically didn't even make it to Eau Rouge. He just decided in the drive-through of Mackie D as well, it's my time now. And this is where convertibles become the best vehicle ever as well.
As long as you're willing to push that one button.
As long as you're
exactly.
willing to push that one button,
Absolutely.
it's a hot Bloemfontein day, you look so cool in your convertible after a night out, whatever. You just tell your mate, listen here, dude, jump
Jump out the top.
Jump out the top. Don't. If you vomit in my car, I will literally kill you at the top of what did I call it now? The kurkprop top or dop or whatever. Now I'll literally kill you there. So
I must admit, I'm very, very glad that I have outlived that phase of my life where I have friends who get that alarmingly drunk on a regular basis. And we are now older and more mature, and we don't do that sort of thing anymore. Anyone else for a drink?
yeah, please.
But guys, we're sort of running our mouths here on what was supposed to be a quick whip around the room. Our actual topic for discussion today is the cars that got away. Right, guys, we get to that part of the show where I thank our amazing sponsors, Master Panel Beaters, for making all of this possible. Master Panel Beaters, as I'm sure you know by now, is a major structural repair center in Montague Gardens, just outside Cape Town. They do incredible work. They are approved by some really big major manufacturers. They get audited by these guys once every 6 months. These manufacturers will send inspectors out and check on Master Panel Beaters' premises. They will check on their facilities, the equipment they use, the processes, and the actual workmanship. And based on that, they then give them their certification. These guys have incredibly high standards, so the fact that they have these approvals and so many approvals says a lot about the kind of work that they do. If you have any kind of work that needs doing to your car, Master Panel Beaters should be your first port of call. Now let's get on with the show. So if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to kick us off there, because this is a love story, really. I feel like I should have like piano and violin music going in the background here, but
Titanic singing in the background.
Yeah, many years ago, I completely fell in love with a particular brand. And
just continue, dude. I'm just making some.
Dude, I do not have auto pitch correct for what you're doing right there.
He's not going to be able to edit it out anyway.
So yeah, I mean, I've always been a huge fan of car makers that have this single-minded philosophy, and they know exactly who they are. They know exactly what it is that they build. And Jaguar have always done that. BMW, until recently, used to do that. You know, the ultimate driving machine. Jaguar was always about grace, pace, and space. And TVR was always about the loudest, most obnoxious way to kill yourself quickly.
While smelling like glue.
Whilst smelling like glue. And I just genuinely loved that about them. Until I drove one. Because once you meet your hero and you drive one, your opinion changes. And at that point, I stopped loving them and I started lusting after one. It is genuinely one of the best driving experiences I've ever had, was driving a TVR Chimera 500. I absolutely loved that car.
So that's why your wrist is sore. You were thinking about the story last night.
Yes. But anyway, the Chimera is a car that is quite rare in South Africa. TVRs in general are quite rare in South Africa, but one came up for sale through Bloomsbury when they were still sort of at the bottom of what is now Helen Suzman Drive. And I drove through to Cape Town to have a look at this car. And I test drove it, and I was blown away. I mean, I knew it was going to be a fun thing, but it is just so ridiculous. It is the most moronic and idiotic car ever. It's one of those cars that becomes a talking point just by getting into it, because you have to explain to other people what it is and what it does and why it does things a certain way, because it's just, none of it makes any sense to any normal person. It's just the most idiotic thing you can possibly put on four wheels.
It's like a mid-2000s one? When were they made?
Yeah, it would have been a late 90s car.
Okay. So was that then Rover V8?
Yes, it was Rover V8, but the 500 was special because 500s were bored out to 5 liters by TVR, and then TVR replaced the normal Rover cylinder heads on it and put their own cylinder heads on it, and it made stupid amounts of power. It was horrendously unreliable.
I wanted to say it took it from unreliable to stupidly unreliable.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just part of its charm. And yeah, I absolutely loved that car. But I test drove it, and at that stage, I wasn't as confident in my driving as I am now. And I also wasn't as confident in my mechanical abilities as I am now. And a TVR is a car that you have to be willing to work on yourself, because you're going to constantly be working on it, quite frankly, which makes it both the best and worst car I've ever driven. I've always said that the TVRs are the best and worst cars ever. Anyways, I then sort of had to think about it, and I thought to myself, if I had 2 other cars in the garage, at least, and I had the mechanical knowledge of how to keep this thing going, and I had the driving skill required to make sure that I'm not going to turn myself into a greasy spot on the road somewhere with this thing, yes, this car would make sense. But unfortunately, it is just that little bit too way out there for me, and I really shouldn't buy this thing, because I'm going to end up either injuring myself or bankrupting myself.
No in between.
So I passed on it. And then I regretted it instantly. Once I decided I'm not buying this car, funnily enough, it sold within a week, and I regretted it. I kept looking for it. I kept trying to find out where that car went, and I just never saw it again. Until about 18 months later, when, after Bloomsbury had moved from where they were to Pardon Island, and I saw it advertised again through them. But it was now wrapped in matte black, which I didn't like. Mm. But it was the same car. It was undoubtedly the same car.
Yeah.
So I phoned the salesman. I said, listen, is this the same car that you guys had a year and a half ago? Blah, 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 blah. He says, yeah, it's the same car. The guy just wrapped it. He wants to sell it because he never drives the car. His wife is terrified of it. And therefore, he just doesn't want to drive it anymore. So I said, okay, well, I'm a little bit stuck this week and over the weekend, but I want to come in on Monday and have a look at it. And I thought to myself, if it's still there on Monday, I am buying that car. If it still runs and drives as well as it did the last time I drove it, it's mine. I'm not letting this one get away from me again. So I told the guy, I think it was... That was back in the days when Alan Friend still worked for Bloomsbury. I phoned Alan and I said to him, listen, I'm coming on Monday. I'm coming to look at that car. So he said, cool, it's not a problem. So Monday morning, I don't even phone him to confirm or anything. I jump in the car. I drove through to Bloomsbury. I get there. I walk into the showroom. Alan's not there. I'm looking around. I can't see the TVR anywhere. And I walked up to the first salesman I could see and I said, listen, I'm here to look at the TVR. Is it still here? Is it for sale? He says, well... unfortunately, the owner of the car was on consignment with us. The owner of the car came to fetch it on Friday. He said he just wants to use it for the weekend. He was on his way back to us this morning, and he sort of thought to himself, I've never poked this car with a stick to see what it would do. Oh. And on Marine Drive, going towards Bloomsbury, literally like a couple of 100 meters from the dealership, he put his foot down, lost the back end, smashed it into a pavement, and completely destroyed the front suspension, front bumper, front fender of that car. And they were like, I'm sure the car's going to be written off if you want to buy the wreckage and then fix it and whatever. And I was just like, no, I can't do that. Yeah. I can't do that. And whatever happened to that car, I don't know, because I've never seen another 500, a Chimera 500 in this country, ever. I've never seen another one.
I wonder what they would do with it, because isn't that car basically also a canoe? They will.
Yeah, I mean,
they won't crush it for metal.
Buy the molds, basically.
Yeah,
just build your own one.
But I mean,
that's how many TVRs are there?
YouTube rebuild.
There's not many of them in South Africa. There's a handful of them.
I've always lusted after the Sagaris.
Yeah, Sagaris.
Sagaris. Sagaris. That's
now the only reason I wouldn't go that way is because that has TVR's own engine in it. Okay, it has the Speed 6 straight 6 motor in it.
Okay.
It's a 4-litre straight 6 motor. It makes about 400 horsepower. It's a beast of an engine. But if you were in the UK, go for it. Here, you'll never find parts for it.
And there's a guy in the shed in the UK that can fix it for you.
Yeah, there's a guy in a shade in the UK.
Which
sorry.
TVR had the door handle under the mirrors?
I think it was
the Chimera.
Was it the
Is it the
Chimera?
Chimera?
The Chimera had that, the Cerber had that, but only later Chimeras had that. Early Chimeras had like a big silver button behind the door that you push to open it from the
Like an
outside.
Alpha.
And then on the inside, there's no door handle on the inside to open the door. Instead, you've got your gear lever and then your handbrake, and behind that is like this beautiful machined aluminium knob, but it's like the size of an apple. It's like this big aluminium knob. If you want to open the left-hand door, you twist it to the left and the left door pops open. You twist it to the right and the right-hand door pops open.
Oh, wow.
Wasn't there a few videos made of people trying to start TVRs?
Yeah.
So they're so complex.
Top Gear actually
did
did that.
something like
They said, here's the TVR, here's the key, get in, start it, and then get out.
Yeah, it's a good
And-
one.
And it was like something like, if
they-
you can do it, you can get the car. or
They
something.
had 3 guys who tried it, and they were in there for like 15, 20 minutes, and they couldn't
start it.
They couldn't do it. And I think that was the TVR Tuscan. But you know, that's just, it's some
That's
of the
part
cool
of it.
things about TVRs that I love. It's like you get into a TVR, you turn the lights on, and it looks like the rev counter lights up and all the other dials don't. Because the rev counter actually is lit more brightly than the other dials, because they just said that's the only one you really need to see.
So that's what TVR told you. Meanwhile, they ran out of money and put an LED on the one side and a normal UE on the
You know,
other
it's
side.
entirely possible. There's also, you know, all kinds of quirks. Like if you drive a Chimera until the engine's hot and you turn it off, you'll struggle to start it again because the starter wire runs so close to the engine that the wire itself, the cable to the starter motor, gets so hot that the resistance increases. And then the battery doesn't have enough power to crank the engine. So you have to wait for the cable to cool down before you can start the engine again.
And isn't TVR also the car that say if you pull back some of the trimmings in the
Yes.
car, then there's like swear words
Yes.
that the mechanics
So
and the guys
this-
who build it wrote
this-
on it and stuff like that?
This particular Chimera that I went to look at, I do this whenever I see a TVR. You pull back the carpet specifically in the boot.
Yeah.
Because that's
Yes.
where the technicians tended to have their fun. If you pull back the carpet in the boot, you will almost always find some manner of graffiti that he's left on there for the next guy on the production line. So in this particular Chimera 500, you peeled it back and it said Billy is a knob.
So, if you're out there and you wrote Billy is a knob, please contact us at...
Did you ever follow up what happened to that car? Like was it written off or because I mean surely it must have gone. It would not have because of the the rarity of it in South Africa. Maybe someone that's willing to sell TVR parts or whatever must have bought it.
I have
right?
absolutely no idea what happened to that car.
Oh.
I
There's so few of them.
I did at one stage try to find out, and they did say that the wreckage was available for sale from the insurance company because it was written off essentially.
It's a bit of a lost cause then.
But what happened to it after that, I don't know.
The probability of it going overseas again is I guess the highest because
I reckon that car would have been stripped for
Yeah,
parts.
or stripped for parts.
No one would have bothered to export that because the chassis was damaged, and it would have been too difficult to find all the spares required to fix that car in South Africa, and it wasn't worth enough money to actually ship it elsewhere to get it fixed. So I reckon it was just stripped for parts and salvaged out.
Well, sorry Neil, the car that got away for me, and it's kind of a double whammy because I owned it for a few months, was my first car, my dream car, the car I lusted after. It's my GT Junior or GTV, not the Junior because it was 1750. So it was a 1972 GTV.
Is that the one with the 4 lights? The 4 lights
Yeah.
in front?
4 lights in
That's
front.
the only way I can know. Like I can I know the difference
so it
between
has
them.
2 outer lights and then 2 the smaller ones on the inside. So that was for me a poster car. It was, and the funny part is, from when I was born to when I could drive, my dad never owned an Alpha. He never owned an Alpha that I knew of. But before I was born, he owned Alphas. He owned multiple Alphas. Everyone in my family owned Alphas. So it's almost like it literally stays in you. So I lusted after this junior, and one of my mates, Nicholas, told me he has a family member or whatever. He has a junior that's been standing for 3 years, and it's just standing and rotting. I'm sure if you offer him something, he'll sell it. And I said, okay, this is cool. And of course, my dad tried to speak me out of firstly owning an Alpha, because he's gone through it. And then secondly of owning an old car, because obviously you don't want your child driving an old car that's not safe and whatever. Eventually I wore him down, and we bought this junior from this woman that had issues or whatever for like 30 something. This was in 2015, so not even that long ago.
Well, that's a bargain compared to today's prices.
Yeah, it was 30 something grand, and I got in the car immediately. I had no brakes. I obviously didn't tell my dad this, because I didn't want him to say, "Oh, you're taking this piece of crap back," and whatever. Anyway, so immediately I had no brakes. I almost drove into the back of my dad. I didn't have a license at that stage. At least we lived in Mexico, part of Bloemfontein.
Kraaibakistan.
And we spent quite some money on it. I think all in all we were 70 grand into the car. And
Including the car?
Including the car. And this was a well-sorted junior that I daily drove. I daily drove it to school. Bloemfontein gets like minus something in the mornings. Always started first turn. Never
there was
needed
definitely something wrong with it, because that doesn't sound like an
never
Alpha.
never even used the choke to start it. I never even used the choke, because did you guys know, like, there's probably going to be some kind of guy that's going to tell me, but the carbs was just not set correctly and your floating needle wasn't.
So you were running a rich, that's why you didn't need the...
It was just running rich all the time.
Yeah. With the Weber carbs, from what I heard, if you use the choke, you basically flood them immediately. If you try and start those Weber carbs of the Alpha by using the choke, you're gonna flood it, or you're gonna spoil the plugs or something. But anyways, so I had this junior. I owned it for I think 6 months. That I drove it as a daily, drove it to school, drove it back, etc. And the big issue was, this bastard never got me the papers for the car. Because he always said the car's in his son's name and his son is in America, but when he's back, and with my nagging, obviously my dad left me and he thought, this is kind of like someone we semi-know or so you won't, screw us. And then I remember it felt like it was like one morning I woke up and my dad just said, "Listen here, get our money back, we're taking this car back." Which is fair, because I was driving a car that was last registered in 2013, or no longer back. And the funny part about it actually was one of the teachers at my school used to own the vehicle. So I literally brought his old Alpha back to him. They were like 3 brothers that all had
Did you get A's in all his classes, basically? Did you get A's in all the classes for, like, because the Alpha guys, you guys stick together, It's
They
like,
do, eh?
Unfortunately not, but I think that was more me being an issue than.
Oh,
but it
It was
was
the sour grapes. You stole my car, you little.
it was English. He was an English professor or
Well, that
teacher.
explains a lot.
And I think with my accent, I could just go that far. He helped me out so much, and I think it was one of the classes that I got the best points in. But he could only help my poor Afrikaans soul that much. And so the one morning we had to woke up, and my dad was like, "No, dude, this car needs to go back. This guy's never going to give you the papers, etc." And gave the car back, and we basically told him, "Listen here, what we have into the car, give us back." There wasn't really that much arguing from what I could remember, and he gave us the car back. He gave us
did he
all
pay
the,
you back for
Yeah,
the
he
money
paid-
you put in as well?
Yeah, so he
basically?
paid
Okay.
me back for all the money we spent on the vehicle and the purchase price. So
So you're basically a car flipper. It's a business opportunity. There,
yeah. And then with that money, I literally took that cash like that, bought my black Spider. But anyways, I miss that car so badly. It's like a piece of my soul got tore out of me.
Your one that got away was the BMW, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean that was the one, but I mean I think we never had, we always had like mid-range vehicles, so and our family, my dad always took care of every vehicle we owned, so I wouldn't mind actually buying any of the cars from him ever. But the one I think that now stands out for me a little bit is that we kind of like lost somewhere. Is my late father-in-law bought one of the first double cab Toyota Hilux buckies. And he had one, and I can't remember I didn't do what I normally do. I didn't go check it out on Wikipedia beforehand. So I can't tell you.
Neil didn't do his research.
I didn't do my research beforehand, and Andre wouldn't be here now to diss me for that.
But have you at least checked out when the First and Second World Wars were? Because
I've at least figured thanks to my wonderful friends and you guys, I at least I'll never forget that again. He had one that was like a baby blue color, and which he used in.
I remember that color.
Yeah, it was really, those boxy shaped.
Yeah.
And it suited the car really well. And when he sold or because of circumstances had to sell, they had a farm in Clanwilliam. We had to move him down to Cape Town because of he's getting on an age, and he drove. Actually, then moved to Grabouw. To be closer to us, and one day drove it down to Somerset Mall here, and when he came out, the car was stolen. Bucky was stolen.
Oh, no.
That's usually how Hilux ownership goes.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, my uncle's had 2 Hiluxes stolen from him.
Yeah. So funnily enough, I mean, we've been thinking to see if we can find the VIN number of that again, but. I mean, for me, cars I've got a massive emotional connection to cars.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't necessarily have to be something special. I mean, my first car was I inherited from my grandmother, and I for instance I sold that before she passed away. But I'm the type of guy that if she had passed away and I still had it, I would probably never sell it. I would probably keep it. So there's so many of those sort of stories and cars that I can think of from the past that I would just try and hold on for it as long as possible. But the Bucky, I mean, that one, like me and my wife, we always said, now, geez, imagine if we could have that redone, repainted, because it had like 500,000 kilometers on.
Yeah.
He used it every single day, and that's like part of what when I got to meet him, and kind of like a remembrance from the family would have been something nice to keep and to have.
What is bad about the Hiluxes is what they do is they steal the Hilux, they take the body off, and they just chuck the body away, and they put the frame. They use the frame for the taxis because it's built on the same frame.
Yeah.
So the sad part about that story is
You're never gonna find it.
It's probably still running though.
but as a taxi,
As a taxi somewhere.
Probably still running.
Maybe I'll buy the taxi with the sub, and I'll give Quentin the sub from the taxi. Then he can put in his next X2000 back.
Yeah.
At least, well, shit, he's got another canoe he can put the sub in. Never mind.
exactly.
I want to say at least the
There's
Jagan
no
has.
space in the canoe for subs.
Well, you'll find a way to mount
No,
it somewhere.
no.
If I've learned anything from
Yeah,
your wife
exactly.
today.
I want to add something on what you mentioned about when that TVR. You mentioned it was wrapped, right, in matte black.
Yes.
Is that the most? Because that was a fad at one stage, right? Everyone matte wrapped everything, and is that the thing that looks? Because to my eye, I used to like it a little bit, and I like a bit of a satin black look. But is that the most overplayed thing? One of the most overplayed things in the car community now?
It got overplayed so much that it's now become disgusting.
It is, yes.
And it's hideous. And there's a guy who comes to the Hellenic Club opposite our showroom on a regular basis. He's got a BMW i8 that's wrapped matte black, but with like fluorescent bright purple accent lines on all the shut lines and around the wheels and stuff, kind of making it look like a car from Tron or something, but it is just the most vulgar display of poor taste I have ever seen in my life. It is hideous.
Has he sold you, one of these finance trading bots? Maybe
No, no,
or
no,
told
no.
you how to trade forex.
Forex,
No,
forex
no, no,
trading
no,
bots,
no,
basically.
No. I'm not interested in any of that. No, thank you. No, thank you.
But I have to say, I'd rather take a matte car than a chrome car because
Yep,
that
there's a couple of
was
those as
also
well.
that was
Yeah.
also a big thing back in the
But
day.
I must say, going off topic a little bit, we had a guy come in one day with a Ferrari Roma, and it was this beautiful dark blue metallic color. And I looked at this car and I thought, I've never liked the Roma in red in Rosso Corsa.
Yeah.
I just don't think it looks right on that Ferrari. And it looks good in darker colors like a dark blue or a dark gray or black or something like that. It actually looks beautiful. It's a really, really pretty car. And I was walking around this thing thinking to myself, this is a gorgeous color on this car. And I genuinely thought that was the color of the car. But it was actually a liquid wrap on that car.
Oh.
And when the guy showed me, I couldn't believe it because it looks like paint. It looks like paint. It feels like paint. It has that high quality shine that you can only really get from paint.
From paint, yeah.
But it's wrapped. The car was actually Rosso Corsa underneath.
Wasn't that other Merc that you guys had also something?
The
that-
AMG GT.
Yeah, didn't that also have
yes,
some
it
kind
was.
of liquid? And I wouldn't have
the-
said it. I
the-
would have told you
The
that
matte
paint.
silver on that car was actually the paint.
Yeah,
So the matte silver
but
that the
all
car
the like
was,
blued,
All the little blue bits, the brake calipers and all of that was liquid wrap.
And if you asked me, I would have told you that's how the car came from Merc. It was just a cool spec.
It looked
It looked brilliant.
factory.
You have to,
Looked brilliant.
you have to.
So
as
some of
long
these
as you
wraps are
paint-
getting really, really good.
Yeah, and as long as you maintain it as well, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain ways that you need to, but they say that you should do or should not do with it. But I mean, and also I think when it's done properly, because there's nothing more I hate in this than when you open the door and
And you
the
see
door
the
cards
dorsal,
are a
yeah.
completely different color.
That's annoying.
That's like it's like okay.
Yeah.
Do if you're
Do
gonna
it
if you're gonna
proper.
go do it, then do it properly.
Yeah.
That it's kind of like a complete color conversion.
It needs to look factory.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Something else I saw at the archive the one day, and I have to admit, it looked quite cool. Was I can't remember if it was a Ferrari or what it was, but I've got a
Couldn't
feeling it
have
was.
been that cool if you can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I was more obsessed about the color, but it, they basically got the PPF,
Mhm.
but Saturn PPF.
Oh,
And
yeah.
They just put the Saturn PPF on the car, and
That
it didn't
works on
make
some
it
cars.
that. It didn't
There's-
make it
there's a
that
lot of the-
vulgar Saturn matte.
Yeah.
Sorry, that
a
vulgar
lot of the
matte.
Yes.
new discoveries are being satin wrapped by Hillstar panel beaters. They've got a guy there who just satin wraps discoveries all the time, and it looks brilliant once it's done. It actually makes that car look fantastic. It works on that, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily something I would do.
No, but what I mean is, instead of getting these vulgar wraps like you would, you've got such a lot of factory cars has such nice paint.
Yeah.
But
So here's another funny tangent to go off on. We recently sold a very nice Ferrari to a customer, and the car was completely wrapped with PPF, but it was what I like to call old technology PPF.
so it started yellowing.
It goes yellow, and it doesn't shine like paint shines. And that's my biggest gripe with PPF. I like detailing my cars and polishing them and making them shine, get that glass finish on it and everything. And you can't do that with PPF. In fact, you can't polish PPF at all because you'll leave swirl marks on it. But he took that car to a detail shop in Cape Town that I'd never heard of before. But these guys just did an absolutely next level job on this car. I mean, it cost them a pretty penny, but at the same time, if you think about it, it was a 1% investment in the value of the car. And they removed the old film. They did a full paint corrective polish, 3-stage polish on the car. They did a ceramic coat on it, and they put their new self-healing, ultra-clear, super shiny PPF on the front and the sort of high impact zones on the car. And first of all, you can't see that they're covered anymore. You can't see the film is on the car. It shines exactly like the painted parts of the car. And you know that feeling you get on a freshly polished car where you can...
It feels so
where
smooth.
it's literally like
stunning.
glass.
Yeah.
It is so beautiful what they've done to that car. It is unreal.
That's crazy. That's something that grinds my gears, is when people do the PPF, but they literally stop the PPF line in the middle of the bonnet and you see the
But you know,
line.
a lot of the times it's because they
Yeah,
get these
why?
cheap PPF products from China, and the film just isn't wide enough to cover the bonnet on an F12 or a 599 or something that's quite a wide car. So you end up with these join lines in the middle of it, and those join lines get dirt in them that you can't get out, and you have these black lines going up and down the bonnet and stuff like that.
That's stupid.
Plus, they say, hey, a PPF has got a specific age, right? And the irony is
Yeah.
you buy it, you put it on to protect the paint. But if you leave it on too long, for instance, for like, 3-4 years,
You take the paint
then
off with
you
it.
take the paint off with it.
And
So-
anyways, you're not PPFing a Corolla. If you PPFing something, it's because you really care about the paint and it's an expensive car. So why, you dingus, would you buy cheap PPF?
Well, exactly.
I think you can.
That's like I said, you know, this guy went, and when I heard what he paid for this detailing, I thought, geez, that's a lot of money to
Yeah.
spend on a paint protection, package and a full detail on a car. But then, like he said, it's a 1% investment in the value of the car.
Yeah.
And on a car like that, it absolutely makes sense to do that because it's 1% of the value of the car, and it's protected for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And it looks incredible. It genuinely looks insane. It looks better than what it did when it came out the factory.
You know
It's
what?
beautiful.
You know, the one thing is, I mean, I've also thoroughly enjoyed. I've done a bit of ceramic coating on some parts of my cars before, like mainly like the headlights. I bought it, and weirdly enough, it's super easy to apply. The most expensive bit of it, of course, is to buy it.
Yeah.
In my like what is it, like a hobby detailing opinion. But one thing I really would like to get done is dry ice cleaning the under tray. And now we like really like, but that's
We get it very
Very
technical. Yeah,
technical, yeah,
Andre
but-
would have killed himself
Yeah,
by now.
yeah, exactly.
Because
That's why I thought
he
we'd be-
doesn't even wash his own vehicles as well.
Andre would be in the corner with a...
So let's just quickly recap before we get back to that. So Andre won't put down a roof because it's one button. He won't wash his stunning Alfa Romeo 4C himself because that's also too much effort. Why would you do that? Anyways, carry on.
yeah, yeah. Well, so I mean,
We're not just bashing Andre because he's not here.
No, we won't do that.
We're not bad friends at all. No, the before and after results of that, and you can use it on paint and like especially I think like a lot of guys are, especially if you've got like if you have something special or a classic, really it just rejuvenates the underside and also the ability to clean and maintain the car.
Sorry, like I said, we're going off on a complete tangent here. We can do a complete podcast on car
We
care.
get very
But
geeky.
something that I did on which car was it that I did it on? On my not the Z4. It was after my Z4. It was the MX-5 that I did it on. So one of the things that I'm always sort of cognizant of is the fact that whenever you touch your car, whenever you touch the paint, whether you're washing it or drying it or whatever you do that's touching the paint is going to leave some kind of mark on it. And by that measure, I always try to touch the car as little as I possibly have to when I'm cleaning it and doing stuff to it. So one of the things that I actually did on my MX-5 was I used a fairly cheap hybrid ceramic wax on it, just as a protective layer on it, and it worked brilliantly to make that car shine like a diamond in a goat's ass. But what was really cool about it was it made cleaning that car afterwards so much easier. Because with that ceramic coating on it, dust doesn't stick to it. If it gets dusty, you just take it for a drive and the dust blows off it. if you get stuff splashing up onto it or splattering onto it, you just hose it off, and it's hydrophobic, so everything just runs off it, and you don't even have to dry it. It looks brilliant. So yeah, if you're into car care and that kind of thing, I would say ceramic coating, or at the very least some kind of cheap hybrid
coating.
ceramic wax. The hybrid ceramic wax, honestly, it lasted me about 3 to 6 months on that car, whereas a proper ceramic coating will cost you a lot more, but it'll last you like 9 years.
I'm on the ceramic coating. Like I had our BMW ceramic coated, and maybe it's the mid or whatever I washed, but I think it doesn't last. I don't think it lasts 9 years. I think like it also depends on weather conditions. You park outside, and
how many times you wash it.
Yeah, I would say
Like these guys that I mentioned earlier that this Ferrari went to for detailing, I don't want to mention them by name now because I genuinely, we've spoken and I want them to be a guest on the podcast at some stage or another. But they have a coating that they import themselves from Switzerland, and that coating is guaranteed it will last 9 years minimum.
Crazy. The Swiss
And it
doing
is,
the most
it is
again.
genuinely, it is hard as nails. And when you apply that stuff to the car, it looks like glass. It is, I keep saying the glass finish, but it looks like someone's added a layer of liquid glass over the car. That's how shiny it is. And it gets that depth to it as well.
I remember your MX-5. It was very clean. It was very clean. But the only issue was it was so clean that the brakes didn't work.
Yeah, the brakes didn't work. It pissed oil. It was rusted. It's crap. I hated that car.
that was polishing a turd, mate.
No, I genuinely hated that car.
You didn't have it long.
No, I hated it. The MX-5, it's good for a lot of things, but no, I hated that one.
And it wasn't a button to take off the roof. You had to manually take off the
No,
roof.
mine was a button.
Oh.
Yeah,
do they not have a clip?
Okay,
But you have
never
two clips, right? The MX-5s have a clips in the front.
Not my one.
Oh,
Because mine was a later NC that had the hardtop, the folding hardtop.
I just wanted to
And
say
that's literally
because
just a button.
that would have been even
What
even rougher for Andre to do, you know.
But was there an NC with a folding hardtop?
Yes?
His,
No.
not.
Or
Yeah,
is
oh,
it
the folding hardtop.
Folding
Yes.
hardtop,
an
yeah.
NC with a folding hardtop?
Yes.
I've never seen that. I know that there's a hardtop that you can put on, like after.
No.
But
Mine
it made it
had
as
a
heavy
folding
as
hardtop.
Okay.
it made it almost as heavy
Maybe
as
it's a
one of the
350Z.
GTR's wheels.
She's
so-
like, and then like they talk about like weight and stuff. Quentin, like with you've lost some cred today, mate. I can tell you that with all the subs and stuff.
I'm just completely losing all of my petrol head cred here. I've admitted to wanting a Tesla. I'm driving heavy S2000s with tiny little 10-inch subs that apparently are a big deal. And now I'm driving NC MX-5s that weigh as much as Belgium. So
It's
yeah,
a safe
I mean,
space, yeah.
next week we're going to be discussing hair dryers and facial care products, I guess, because yeah, that's all I'm good for these days. And I'm sorry.
I mean,
Andre,
it's
come
fine.
back! These guys are nasty to me. So yeah, I think that's pretty much a wrap for today, guys. Thanks for coming. It's been a pleasure, mostly. And we will hopefully see you all back here next week.
See you again, and we can't miss this, even though Andre is not here. Stay
No, don't
classy,
say
San
it.
Diego.
Oh man.
Oh man! Stay classy.
Stay classy.
Ek
You know you love it.
NC, julle praat kak.
Ek glo jy, bro.
NC's
Dis
got a
waar.
folding hardtop.
Dis jy retrofit Janesh het hom gefit of so, nee, dit is
Ek het Jy sit ook nie syne in jou studio nie. My fuck, daar is hy. You see, there's no like I honestly didn't know there was NCs with NC hardtop and my folding hardtop.